Welcome back to Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising, the show where we unpack what's real and what's just noise in the world of marketing, founders, and funnels. I'm your host, Adam W. Barney, and today's guest is calling BS on how most of us are buying media, and he's got the data to prove it. Noel Geer is the founder of Connected, a company turning offline purchase data into online performance gold while filtering out 2/3 of the noise along the way. Noel, you said it best. Most programmatic buyers are doing a terrible job. Let's dig into that spicy truth.
Not a very political statement, is it?
Politically correct. I don't know, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I got to be a little more politically correct, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's nobody's fault. In terms of like the quality that's happening right now, because it's being driven from both sides of the fence, right? So programmatic buyers are being forced to buy media in a specific way by clients who don't understand the ecosystem. And when you've got, the industry, pushing a certain way, and people are forced to buy a certain way, you get the outcomes that equals, right? So that's really at the end of the day what tends to happen is, that's why I'm on a bit of a mission over the next little while to educate as much as I possibly can on both sides of the fence so that can converge into, quality, because everything has to work together. And if you're really going to be successful, it's about the omni channel experience, right? And so, because programmatic has a very important role to play. So how to properly utilize that is really important. And I guess you want me to dive into why.
Well,
right?
I'm gonna say, the why you're focused on bridging that. I know one of the things you've shared with me is that 84% of purchases still happen in store. I guess maybe along why you're focused on that. Why is that stat so misunderstood in the ad world?
Yeah. I mean, I've been in the ad business for 25 years. I've been in digital for 15 now. And, we kind of get trapped in our own little world, right? Especially in the digital space.
Yep.
So, you go to events and everybody talks retail media. So you see these amazing stats where it's showing retail media is doing this like insane curve, right? Yep. And that looks great. And a lot of that is so there's miscommunication on what retail media actually is, right? In some cases, when someone says retail media, they're only thinking online. They're thinking retail media online, Amazon, Walmart, Kroger, all these platforms that are being built. But retail media actually encompasses in-store digital out of home as well. And that's where people go wrong, is not understanding that those two things actually need to work together. One of the stats that blew my mind was the fact that, one, as you noted, so 84% of purchases are still in store for retail, which is crazy. And just to put this into perspective, before COVID, it was about 95%.
Okay.
COVID hit, and it was 5% online. COVID hit, that climbed up to like 25%. So it dropped. The in-store purchases obviously dropped significantly. Online blew up. You saw companies like Shopify scale, right? And then as soon as COVID stopped, it went right back down. So it was still higher than pre-COVID, but then it dropped right back down to 16% of retail sales being online. Now, where this is really interesting is, let's take a category like CPG, right? So consumer packaged goods. Pretty much grocery is one of the biggest, and it's even more skewed, right? With grocery, it's like 90%, even higher, that's happening in store. Now, look at the spend in North America. And if you look at the predictions and estimates for 2025, there's about $700 million predicted to be spent in store through digital out of home in the in-store experience. Online is taking 56 billion. 56 billion. And half of that is going to online retail media. So call it $28 billion is being spent on online retail media. Well, 700 million of that. So what's that? 2% or 4% is going to the in-store, where the recency is much closer, right? Where the actual purchases are happening. What a discrepancy. I mean,
huge.
It's huge, right? So it when you really understand the data, it's like, what the hell's going on? It doesn't make any sense. That the discrepancy in that spend. So that's why we're so, I've been for 10 years, I've been diving in and just focused on being able to map out that in-store and offline experience of that purchase data that's happening, because I believe that is so important. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. And it's also something that we can be unique at, right? So we're able to get, purchase data, real life purchase data through, card transactions. It makes it, and that's how the gap gets bridged. And then you've got customer journey. So like, what are people doing before they go to the store? What are they doing after? That offline information, that offline behavior is really important. And I believe that is part of what's going to help bridge that gap. Because I think the problem is brands are really addicted to online metrics. Some call it vanity metrics.
They're easily trackable, right? That's a piece of the puzzle, right? They're easy to dangle. They're easy to tie into.
Yeah. And they continue to struggle to get those offline metrics. But that's changing, I was just at an IAB event. We were on a panel and they were talking about signal loss and all this. There's so much signal loss, cookies and all this kind of stuff. And it really isn't. There's actually more IDs than there's ever been. There's actually more signals than there's ever been. It's just measurement is changing. So how you measure a purchase, be it online or offline or wherever it is, that is changing, because you don't have the same one-to-one measurement tracking that you've had in the past. So I think that is a really good predictor that could actually really help this in the end, because if you all of a sudden don't have access to, the drug of the metrics that online's giving you, that might change the dynamic. And then brands can get more focused on a full funnel, a full omni-channel, presence, properly distributing their marketing dollars the way they should, versus, everything kind of being taken based on the fact that they can get these vanity metrics that they're not able to get elsewhere, that now they're actually able to start surfacing in different ways.
I have to laugh because that experience over 25 years, plus is incredible, right? I have to also laugh because I was working with one of the major grocery chains in this country about 10 years ago. And one of the things that we did that I guess you would probably enjoy hearing about is the fact that they believed that, and I think this is true. It's not something that's made up in the world. Their in-store revenue would increase during the flu shot season, because they knew that people would come into the stores to get their flu shot. That's a weird tangential that you never would assume from a outside perspective that moves the needle. But maybe talk a little bit more about how the data game has changed through all the noise of the evolution over the last 25 years.
Wow, 25 years. Yeah. I mean, everything, right? Where do I start? Let's kind of move closer to today, right? And the loss, the whole thing that's happening with cookies. I mean, we all thought cookies were completely going to go away. Then all of a sudden they weren't. Then all of a sudden they were. Then all of a sudden they weren't. What does that really mean? In terms of, again, it comes back to measurement, but what actually spurred that was a good thing, because this whole idea of IDs came about. And even though it's not a perfect science yet, it is leading us towards, better outcomes. The only thing that comes with that is being able to properly identify fraud. So, one of our founders kind of spun off and started just focusing on building IDs for mobile devices, right? So, and then just focused on that. And that allowed us to start understanding where does this mobile device actually live, because that is the key to creating offline data, is understanding, down to a household. In Canada, you can't store it at a household. You have to store it at a 6-digit postal code, which is like 15 households. And in the US, that's a zip plus 4. So, and those are, I think, are going to become very important, metrics measurements to understand, because with privacy compliancy and changes in laws and all that sort of thing, that ability to be aggregate by, building cohorts of households is really important, and it allows you to scale as well. So case in point, when he started doing that, they started building algorithms around identifying fraud. So the first thing that occurred was how many of these IDs are real and how many of them are not. A filter of about 52 different behaviors to identify real human beings versus, bots, click farms, that sort of thing.
Right.
So 2/3 of those IDs went to the fraud list. 1/3 of those IDs went to the clean list, and then they get mapped and then they get associated. So IDs are great. But as these IDs get processed and you're trying to build out audiences and all that kind of stuff, really important to be cognizant of which, understanding how to actually filter all those IDs also through some sort of system that allows you to identify fraud, which you can then use. And that's going to happen across the board. CTV IDs are going to, those are just scaling like crazy. That's going to be a big deal. For sure, that is going to get hit. Like the fraudsters, they're going to go where the money is, right? And mobile is where the money is. That's why it has the most fraud. So you've got to be really understanding, because what is it? 60% of time spent in digital is on a mobile device, right? Sometimes as high as 70%. I think CTV is gonna come in with a sledgehammer and do a lot in terms of time spent, right? And it's so that's where the money. So there's gonna be money there. So the fraudsters are gonna start trying to figure out how do we copy CTV IDs and start faking that. So you got to be really aware of it, right?
Why do you think, that obviously that says a lot about the state of ad fraud. More broadly, why do you think quality over quantity is still such a hard sell in digital media?
Yeah, man. It's like being on the advertising, specifically on the digital advertising side, it's always a challenge to, when you're talking with clients, to convince them not to just go for reach and the lowest CPM they can. Big companies have procurement, protocols that basically state like your CPM has to hit this certain number. They're used to traditional media where it's not verified, and not like it's verified, but it's not like a 1-to-1 scenario. So you can't compare those CPMs. I was in out of home for a long time, and out of home's great. I love out of home, but those numbers of impressions are completely inflated, right? All the time. And that's fine. That's fine, because you're expecting that, and it still works, right? But then you try to compare those CPMs to a digital CPM. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because this is an actual viewable, is viewability metrics, all this kind of stuff. So if you just go after reach and try to get the lowest cost CPM you can, ultimately you're killing your brand, you're killing your long-term sustainability of your marketing campaign, because you're just going for the bottom of the barrel, right? And what ends up happening a lot of times is when it comes to performance campaigns, performance media, they end up chasing that lower volume, inventory, those lower quality customers, because they're chasing a cost per acquisition and the lowest one they can get while trying to scale. So they're at the bottom of the marketing funnel, and they're spending all their money there, and then the lifetime value of the customers that they're getting is equal to what they're paying. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. When you actually start building on the multiplier, meaning you start really investing in the top of the funnel, building audiences based on, I want to target people that I know are going to be of high value, and driving them down the funnel versus just going after the people that are already on the bottom and you're just using intent data, search, all that kind of stuff. Then you're going to get a cost per acquisition equal to a low value, right? So the lower your cost per acquisition, the lower potentially the value of your customer.
Yep.
If you expect to run a campaign and somebody's just going to click on an ad and buy, then we know that just doesn't make any sense. When have you ever clicked on an ad and bought immediately?
That's why I'm asking this question. Is anything real in paid advertising? Being someone who built a career on 20 years of digital marketing, who rarely firsthand ever actually clicked on a paid ad. It's one of those things that I've struggled with across my career understanding.
Absolutely, there is 100% really good strategies that move the needle from a real perspective. If you focus on the quality of the types of people that you're targeting, if you have good content, when you build personas for communication.
Yep.
You use behaviors for targeting.
Yep.
And then the combination of those things and patience, right? So understanding it takes time to really make the needle move.
Yep.
And if you have the patience to do that and you focus on the entire journey, you can produce outcomes that just move the needle. I mean, a really good example is we have a college that we work with. And we ran 2 campaigns. They had a fall open house and a spring open house. And in the fall open house, we got just started collecting the data, building audiences for them. We looked actually at where their students were coming from, what geographical areas were they coming from, and then identified, where there was high engagement. And then on the second run, but we pushed them up. We were like, guys, stop. Look, we're going to go, we need you to buy into the fact that we're going to use whatever CPM we need to, right? We want big inventory. We want large display ads, not these little tiny, 300 by 50s at the bottom of an app. We want
that nobody sees. Talk about eye tracking tools that you can use online. Those just disappear into the ether.
They have their place, right? Retargeting. It's like reminders. They're good for reminders. But when it comes to prospecting and you're trying to move the needle, and you're trying to create something, you want to go big. You want to go viewable, right? So combining really good data with really good inventory and not worrying about what that CPM looks like.
Yep.
The end result, I got a call from the CMO, and he actually, so I think we saw 120% lift in their applications.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't believe he was like, I don't believe this number. It doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
So he called me and he said, so I didn't believe the number because it just looked so inflated. He's like, but then I went to the campus, and he's like, I couldn't believe it. It was the biggest event we've ever, there was people everywhere. And that to me was such justification, because it was it wasn't just a number within a report, or sure, you see applications, you see sales, that sort of thing, but they actually went and they saw real people arriving to their campus. They had 2 to 3 times more people at their open house than they'd had in the previous year, and that just goes to show you you have the ability to target real people and understand that, and do a quality versus quantity job. That's actually what's going to drive the results.
I dig it. If you could, Noel, say change one industry standard metric, whether it's CPM, ROAS, or something like that, which one would go and what would replace it?
Which one would go? Oh, man. It's a tough question to answer, only because it depends on the KPIs, right? It's different KPIs for different people, but let's do this. How about we focus on one metric that should be our North Star at all times?
Boom. I dig it. Yes.
Lifetime value above anything else. That is only the only thing that matters. That application is building. When you build audiences, you build them for lifetime value. When you build your user journey, you build it for lifetime value. Be it from top of funnel to bottom of funnel to re-engagement to once you have the customer, how frequently do you communicate to them? How do you drive once somebody buys something once, how do you get customers that are going to buy again and again? How do you get customers that are going to spend more on each transaction? How are you going to get customers that give you a better return on your investment versus a ROAS, which is a shorter term metric? ROI based on a longer term metric, but builds fully understanding what lifetime value means and how do you build for it. Right now, generally speaking, lifetime value is a metric that you track after the fact versus planning for lifetime value.
I have seen it. It's like a third tier metric almost, right? It's not even a primary or a secondary. It gets to that third tier that it tends to get reviewed at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's an example. It could be, so if you build for lifetime value, short term, that means more like, 90-day periods or stints, maybe 180 days. There's examples of companies that have gone like way beyond that. New Balance, and I can't remember the names of the CMO and the CEO, but
that's okay.
They brought out a new CMO at New Balance many moons ago, and he convinced the CEO to let him focus on building the brand. And he said okay, and he said and basically it's like 2 years. Like, you cannot tell me what to do for 2 years. And ultimately the first year, and he just really focused on the top of the funnel and building quality message. For the first year, sales dropped. And then when they hit the 18-month period, it just went whoop, like their brand shot up. They just killed it, like tripled, quadrupled the sales. It was a crazy result. That's an extreme. But I'm not saying you need to do that every time.
But it speaks, Noel, to the patience that most people don't have or traditionally have not had in terms of using that kind of a metric and knowing, because ROAS can change on a weekly basis. It's a consistent driving engine. It doesn't look at that long-term perspective of what's being driven.
Yeah. Yeah. What I do like is there's technologies coming out now that allow you to start thinking about ROI in terms of your media mix, which is good. But again, you need to also then think about audience, because audience effectively leads to lifetime value. If you do a proper job of building your audience, then you effectively can pre-plan and drive your lifetime value over time. And you don't have to wait 18 months. I mean, you can do this in shorter stints. Again, it really depends on the situation, right? Like, are you a brand new brand? Like, does anybody know who you are? That kind of stuff. And really kind of just having the patience. The digital world, if you want to make a comparison to just like, life, the sugar rush versus the healthy diet. So the sugar rush is the CPA, right? Or the cost per lead. The healthy diet is a good balanced mix of proper media, quality media,
right,
food, right. And you get that sugar rush, and it's really hard to get away from. Like, once you get hooked on it, I'm guilty of grabbing a cup of ice cream, and I'm only going to have 2 scoops. I'm just going to have 2 spoonfuls. And the next thing I know, the whole thing is gone. Right.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah. No, this has been a fantastic, sharp, behind the curtain look at what really powers effective ad strategies and what needs to be, let's say, burned to the ground. So for folks who want to connect, learn more about Connected, and not just waste their media budget, where should they go?
So our website is connectedinteractive.com. But we're also very active on our LinkedIn channel. So just Connected Interactive within LinkedIn. We're very, very active there. You can DM us, and you can also send an email to info@connectedinteractive.com or sales@connectedinteractive.com if you want to talk to our BD team or any of that sort of stuff. But
perfect.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And
links to all that'll be below. I had one last question, Noel, for you. For the agency lead or the CMO who is still trusting generic programmatic without vetting the data, what's your 1-sentence power warning that you would give to them?
Do you want to survive?
Don't we all?
Last point I'll make, man, is this industry is going to change dramatically over the next 5 years. And if all of the stuff that is driving that that digital sugar rush right now
Mm-hmm.
is going to slowly start going away. AI is going to change everything, and brand is going to become more and more important. And if you're not on that train, then ultimately you're either going to leave it yourself or you're going to be pushed off it. So it's up to you whether you want to actually make the decision or you want the decision made for you. But either way, it's going to go the same path.
So put your seatbelt on and strap in, right? And
right.
don't give up. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today on Is Anything Real in Paid Advertising, Noel, the show where we separate signal from the sea of noise. I'm Adam W. Barney. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and check out the show notes for all the links, stats, and stories we covered. But Noel, thank you again.
Thanks, Adam.
Want to clean up your offer and install a lead gen machine that won't burn you out? Head to adamwbarney.com and check out the Agency Growth Sprint, built for $250K to $5 million a year ad agencies ready to scale with clarity, not chaos. If you're done duct taping systems and sprinting to nowhere, it's time for strategy that sticks. Visit adamwbarney.com. Clarity over chaos, always.